Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I so do appreciate you being here this morning. This is the only show where we chase the mice of corruption and we claw apart the lies of the politicians. Yes. And we curl up in the warm lap of truth. My name is Conservative Cat. And while you're here, subscribe to the channel. You can also visit patriotpumpenergy.com. Be sure to use the promo code Conservative Cat for $10 off at checkout. Get your premium pre-workout today. Yes, you might notice I am not at my home studio. I am on a remote location, a new studio. Wow, a new studio. I appreciate the comments. Go ahead, head on over to the comments section on YouTube. I'm on Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere you get your podcast as well. Yes, so I'm on vacation. I'm visiting some family out of state. And yeah, new studio. So I hope you enjoyed today's show because we have got a lot to get to because a lot happened over the weekend. And you would think, oh, Labor Day weekend. It should have been a pretty slow weekend for news. Nope. It was packed. I'm going to talk about Ilhan Omar, because of course she challenged people to dig into her financial records. She says, yeah, go ahead, look into my financial records. Well, guess what? This lady is she is immediately regretting it because we did. People looked into her financial records. The Free Beacon actually did. And we're going to dig into their report because she's a millionaire. She claimed that she wasn't a millionaire. She is actually a millionaire. So she's going to immediately regret this, saying, hey, I challenge you to look into my financial records. So Ilhan Omar, we're going to get to her. We're also going to get to $200 million for corn dogs. This is shocking stuff. And Illinois should end state fairs now. I know you're going to think I'm just a fuddy-duddy, a stick in the mud. I hate state fairs. I hate corn dogs. No, I love the fairs as much as anybody. Should the taxpayers be paying $200 million to put on not one, but two state fairs? Let me know in the comments section. And then I want to get to the truth about Illinois' war on small businesses. And a new report came out, the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. It shows us just how many small businesses have left within the past year and really since I think it's 1970s, how many small businesses have left the state of Illinois. And we are just not a business-friendly climate here in the state. So we're going to get to that, but this is really going to be a bulk of today's show. RFK Jr. The Senate is out for blood here. They want RFK Jr.'s head on a stick. I'm telling you, on a stake. They don't like him, Republicans and Democrats alike. And it's really due to this whole CDC director firing. After that firing happened, there were a few things that happened on top of the resignations of some top CDC officials. So he fired a top official. And then after that, a bunch of officials started resigning. And now they're calling Robert Kennedy to testify essentially before the Senate. So we're going to get to all of that. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that like button, hit the share button. That is how you support the program. You can also support by sending super chats, super thanks. I am always so appreciative of anytime you guys can support the program. Anytime you support the program, it goes right back into the Conservative Cat Show. We are hoping to launch within just a couple of weeks here our website. So theconservativecatshow.com. You can head there right now. It's a blank slate, but we are going to be uploading blog posts so that way you can share them out with your friends. A lot of it is going to be my show prep every morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central Time. That's when I do the show. And you guys constantly are asking me like, hey, Kat, where can I get that Twitter clip or that X clip that you had? Where can I get that article that you referenced? I want to make that all available to you on the conservativecatshow.com, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So because of your guys' support, we can. So I appreciate you being here. Let's go ahead and dig into Ilhan Omar. Ilhan, married your brother, Ilhan Omar. Oh, sorry. That slipped. I've got like this weird cold going on. Married your brother. Sorry. Allegedly. Okay, I gotta protect myself. Allegedly. Okay, so the corruption of House members, not anything really new. And I know what you're thinking, Kat. Why are we talking about this? We know they violate campaign finance law. Let's talk about something that matters. No, corruption does matter, and I will talk about it anytime it comes across my desk. Anytime the news comes across my desk, I will talk about the corruption because it matters. Representative, because they're always constantly talking about how President Donald Trump has 34 felonies, which was essentially like a QuickBooks error. Okay, the 34 felonies that he's got, and they talk about that all the time, the left, but nobody talks about the constant campaign finance loopholes that these U.S. representatives are exploiting. So Ilhan Omar, she is kind of added to this book of corruption. She's added her chapter. She did a recent interview in the Business Insider. Okay, so she's very controversial. She's a squad member. She's from Minnesota. And she has been accused of marrying her brother, like actually. Okay. So married her brother to skirt immigration laws. Now those are accusations, allegedly. Um, allegedly complained. She complained recently in this interview about right-wing disinformation and how there's this disinformation campaign out there regarding her finances. There's right-wingers calling her a millionaire, and she claimed that she actually wasn't. So she challenged them. Okay, Business Insider. She goes, well, go look at my financial records, my public financial statements. That turned out to be a terrible idea, folks, because guess who did it? The Free Beacon actually did it. They did just that, and what they found was really damning. So she said this, quote with the Business Insider, she said, maybe try checking my public financial statements, and you will see I barely have thousands, let alone millions. Okay, so the Free Beacon did check on Omar's latest disclosure. So members of Congress, they have to, do these public statements or these public financial statements. And it shows her latest disclosure here shows her and her husband, Tim Minette, okay, are worth at least $6 million and as much as $30 million. So U.S. House of Representatives, the representatives, they can report a range rather than like an exact number of like their worth. They can do that. So we'll get to the details here in just a second about, the money and how much they're actually worth, where they got that money. I want to get to those details, but it's very important to understand. And I know your eyes are glossing over and you're like, Kat, why talk about corruption? We know it exists. No, this is really, really important to show to talk about because Omar has gone not from rags, like she went from pretty much rags to riches in a split second. And this happens all the time in the U.S. House, where they go from rags to riches, and you're like scratching your head. How did they do that so fast? Because it's a game that all of these left-wing politicians play. And I will even go as far as to say some Republicans even play. Okay, so what really bothers me, though, is that you never hear Republicans saying that they're against the oligarchy. Like Republicans play this game, but they don't sit there and proclaim themselves to be warriors against the oligarchy, and they don't sit there and say, "Oh, I'm a waitress," AOC. I was a bartender. I came from nothing and I worked my way up here. No. Your net worth went up by 3,000%. That's not even an exaggeration there, Ilhan. From the time you went into office. So like that's not going from rags to riches in, a gradual, and the Bible talks about this in a gradual way. This is getting rich quick. And the Bible speaks on getting rich quick and how that's actually of the devil and of a sinful way. It's about wealth and gradually gaining wealth. So regardless, it's really not a good idea to snarkily like accuse others of disinformation and tell them to go search your finances, and then they wind up like revealing the opposite of what you claim. I don't know why she would come out there and like knowing her finances, like obviously she's got to know a little bit, right? Knowing her finances, why would she go out there, accuse people of disinformation, which is really not disinformation. It actually proves what you just told us to do. It actually proves what you said wasn't true. So why would you tell us to go do that? Go check into my financials. We did, and it proves us right. Okay, so anyway, in this case, Omar is trying to play this like sleight of hand where she's like, oh, well, it's actually not my money. It's, my husband's money. And I'm not sure how it works in Somalia, but here in America, that's not really how marriage works. Okay. Okay. So you go and look this up. She's actually worth $6 million. And she tries to do this hand waving thing, suggesting that it's her husband's money, not her money. And she plays dumb. But Omar is obviously here in America. I'm not sure how Somali works, but America, that's not how this works. Okay. You are actually privy to the cash your husband has. Okay. So Tim Minette brings in, given her lifestyle and the lifestyle her daughter lives. Look into that. I'm not going to dig into, the personal lifestyles of Ilhan Omar and her daughter. But they have pretty lavish lifestyles. Okay. Pretty not low standard of living, okay, or standard of living. They live a pretty lavish lifestyle, Ilhan and her daughter. So here's the thing, though. One of his companies was the biggest benefactor of Ilhan Omar's campaign. Okay, so now I'm going to dig into who Tim Minette is and how he really generated this wealth. Therefore, Ilhan Omar, because they're married. Okay, that's how America works. It's your money as well. Okay, so prior to them getting money or married, he had been one of the biggest benefactors of Ilhan Omar's campaign. So I've talked about this a few times on the show. If you're new here, I'll catch you up. It's now totaled to a total of $2.9 million that was funneled by Ilhan Omar's campaign into this consulting firm. Okay, this guy's consulting firm, Tim Minette's consulting firm. Now, at this time, they were not married. She went, so after funneling 2.9 million into his consulting firm through her campaign, she went on to have an affair with him and then ultimately married him, which, surprise, suddenly gave them access to all of that money. Okay, so the money that she funneled into his consulting firm, she gets access to that because they're married now. Okay, so you see what's going on here. And the Free Beacon here, they did a report and they go on to explain that Minette got that big infusion of cash from Ilhan Omar's campaign. And then he suddenly left the consulting business to start a variety of other businesses that have made millions more. So then they got married. She had access to all of that money that she funneled into that one business, the consulting firm. And then he left that business and started other businesses that have made millions upon millions more. So their wealth has been derived mostly entirely from the value of Minette's ownership stake in two companies that together were worth no more than $51,000 at the end of 2023. Okay, so you're looking at this thing and you're like, wow, $51,000. And then in 2023, that's how much they're worth. And I just told you that he's worth 6 million. They're both worth 6 million. Okay, so the exact value of Omar's fortune at the end of 2024 is unclear. Like I said, the lawmakers, the U.S. House of Representatives, they value their holdings and debts in ranges. So they could be worth 6 million to 30 million. Okay, there's a range there. Still, the figures of her latest disclosures here, her latest financial disclosures, show that her husband's net worth skyrocketed by at least 3,500% in just 1 year. Okay, so from 2023, I said there's two companies, okay, that were worth nothing, $51,000. It skyrocketed to millions, okay, by 3,500% in just 1 year. So this is not, like I said a little bit or explained a little bit before, this is not the first time Minette's business activities have emerged as a thorn in Ilhan Omar's side here. Okay. They were both married to other people. when they met. Okay, but the pair began an affair while he was serving as a political consultant for Ilhan Omar's campaign, which his firm was paid the whopping $2.9 million during the 2020 election cycle. And then they had the affair. Then he quit that consulting firm job. Then he opened up these two business ventures. I think it's like a winery and a venture capital business or whatever. And it's ballooned in value in just 1 year. Okay. So he branched out after they got married to these other businesses and somehow they've ballooned. So in short, yes, Ilhan Omar is very, very rich. Okay. And her secret lover turned husband gained his money, I mean, seemingly overnight from 2023 to 2024. It was not even worth $51,000. The businesses, those two businesses, the winery and whatever, the venture capital business. And then all of a sudden, he's worth $6 million to $30 million. Okay, where is the House Oversight Committee or the House Ethics Committee? Where are they? Where's the DOJ? Because all of this stinks so bad. I don't know about you, but I think that this is stinky. This is definitely not ethical. I would say it looks bad. So I think that the House Ethics Committee has to get involved here. Welcome to the Conservative Cat Show. I did want to open up with that because anytime I see corruption, anything that stinks to high heaven, I'm like, okay, we got to talk about it here on the Conservative Cat Show because we like to chase the mice of corruption and we claw apart the lies of the politicians and we curl up in the warm lap of truth here on the Conservative Cat Show. Be sure to subscribe right now. All right, let's talk about something that nobody ever wants to touch, and I don't know why. It's like the sacred cow, but I'll touch it. I'll talk about it. Okay. It's the state fairs. I don't know. Nobody really talks about this, but this is like just a blaring example of Illinois' incompetent government and incompetent politicians. And look, I know I love funnel cakes as much as the next guy. Hold on. Oh yeah, that's some good coffee. Okay. So I love funnel cakes as much as the next guy. Love carnivals, love tractor pulls, love carnival rides. I love the whole bit. Okay. Believe me, I do. But the real question is, do the taxpayers of Illinois, should they be footing the bill? That is the question. Should we be the ones footing the bill for two, not one, but two Illinois state fairs? That's the question. So should the state of Illinois, which can't even balance the budget, by the way, every single year when we do our budget, I mean, this last one was $55 billion. That's ballooned from $30 billion since Governor J.B. Pritzker took office. My numbers are, estimates, so don't come at me in the comment sections. So the taxpayers, should they be funding this, being that we can't balance a budget, and by balance a budget, what Governor J.B. Pritzker does every single year. And I think we had like an $80 million budget deficit this prior year, the year before that, pretty much the same. What he does, he just raises the taxes, and that's balancing the budget. Okay, so we can't balance a budget to save our lives. We can't keep the pension funded, 140, probably 145, $50 billion in pension debt. We can't keep Chicago safe. Okay, there were, I think, and like I said, 240 about that deaths or like murders this year from January to September. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not really a whole lot because I know the prior year it was like in the 500s. Well, they don't even report it anymore. Okay. Chicago doesn't even really report their murders anymore because they got bodies on the slabs in the morgue that they're not, crossing their eyes or crossing their T's, dotting their I's. They're not saying like, yes, this was the cause of death, murder. They're keeping those murders pending. Like those people who are on the slabs, they're not classifying those deaths as murders yet. They're classifying them as pending. So there's like 300 or so bodies that they haven't even really counted as murders that should be counted as murders. So they're fudging the numbers there. But point is, we can't balance a budget. We have pension debt. Can't keep Chicago safe. And I don't know if we really should be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on not one, but two state fairs. Did you know Illinois had 2 state fairs? Throw it in the comment section. I didn't even know this. That goes to show you how, like, the $200 billion is not really being spent well wisely, because I didn't even know there were 2 state fairs. So they're not really spending much money on advertising, trying to get people to go there to, cause some economic impact, which would be the only justification for these things, the tourism and the economic impact, the regional and local economic impact these things draw. But they're not doing a good job getting people there, because I didn't even know we had 2 state fairs. Maybe I live under a rock. I don't know. But so there's one in Springfield and there's one in DuQuoin. Okay, so I'm going to take a very unpopular position today. And I'm not coming for anybody. I get it. It's state fairs. Everybody loves funnel cakes, corn dogs, and the farming thing. I get all of that. But today's episode, I might ruffle some feathers. That's okay. That's what this is all about. Okay, so let's lay out the facts. You guys know I'm a numbers gal. I love the numbers. So in recent reports, we're going to dig this up. Governor J.B. Pritzker has been pouring money into the state fairgrounds. So DuQuoin, according to recent reports, had seen over $50 million in upgrades. Okay, so somebody grab a pencil for me out there and start jotting these numbers down and add them up for me. Throw them in the comment section, okay, if you want. So $50 million in upgrades already, okay, to the DuQuoin. So we're on the DuQuoin State Fair. Then they have recently announced $16.4 million more for new road repairs around the fairgrounds, okay? And then there's $30 million from this so-called Rebuild Illinois program, which is total jank, because I remember when the Rebuild Illinois program was announced, everybody pitched it. The Democrats pitched it as an infrastructure program, like hard infrastructure. So our bridges, our highways. Well, it turns out some of this money, at least 30 million of it, is going to the DuQuoin State Fair. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't call that hard infrastructure. Okay. And then another $21.7 million from the building and grounds crew. So there was money allocated to the building and grounds crew from the Department of Agriculture, or to the building and grounds crew from the Department of Agriculture. And then that gets funneled into the state fairgrounds, or the DuQuoin State Fair. Okay. Now, that was the DuQuoin State Fair. So what do we got? 50 million, 30 million, that's 80 million. And then we've got, let's just call it 20 million. That's 100 million. I mean, this is getting insane. Okay. And then 116 million. Okay. So it's slightly less, or it's less. It's definitely less than the Springfield State Fair. I'm doing some numbers here. Like 116 million is what they spent on that. Okay. If my numbers are right. Yep. Yeah. If they're not, throw it in the comment section. 117 million. Beautiful, Jennifer. You're the best. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Love the comment section. Love when you guys participate. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That is the best way to support the program, subscribing. But if you want to give financially, you can always send super thanks, super chats. I'll get to your super chats here coming up in just about 5-10 minutes after I do the state fair bit. But you can also head on over to patriottpumpenergy.com, get your bottle of pre-workout. That's $10 off if you use the promo code ConservativeCat. That's the best promo code out there. So it's a premium pre-workout. It's good stuff. 150 milligrams of caffeine. We're not trying to drug you up and give you 300 milligrams of caffeine like most energy drinks do. It's an energy drink alternative. Okay, so 117 million. Thank you, Jennifer, for the calculation. So let's go over to the second state fair. Okay, this was Springfield. DuQuoin State Fair just wrapped up. I think it ended on September 1st, which was yesterday. So the Springfield one has received about 140 million. Okay, same deal, kind of like a lot from the Rebuild Illinois program. I think it was like $86 million from the Rebuild Illinois program. Like I said, that was supposed to be a hard infrastructure program. It was pitched to everybody, the taxpayers, as a hard infrastructure program. And I wouldn't call corn dogs hard infrastructure. I'm sorry. So let's total this all up. That's a lot of money. Okay, 140 million. So we're looking at well over $200 million in taxpayer dollars. So on 2 state fairgrounds. So the politicians will call this an investment. I call it a subsidy for fried Twinkies. what do you call it? I don't think that this is an investment. Now, defenders of the state fair, Republicans, Democrats alike, okay? Because I get it, Republicans really like it because of the farming and it gets the kids out there, the 4-H clubs, and all that. I love it, and I wouldn't even be opposed to a state fair if we weren't so terrible at running the state. Like I mentioned before, we can't balance budget, pension debt, Chicago crime. Okay, I wouldn't even be opposed to it. I think that it shouldn't be in Springfield. I think that it should be in Southern Illinois. State Senator Terry Bryant, she's actually a defender of these fairs. She, says that this is about fairness. It's about the vast. The reason why we have to is how big the state of Illinois is. You guys might be noticing that I am not in my home studio. Yes, I am out of state. We just traveled the state of Illinois by car. It is a very tough state to travel. It's like, I don't know, 6 hours from central Illinois. Once you're going down south, I'm down south. So 6-7 hours to cross the state, the entire state of Illinois, probably way more than that from top to bottom. I mean, it's a big state. So I get it, like why there'd be 2 state fairs when you're looking at this geographically. Like, we are just a huge state. But like I said, we can't balance our budgets. We have pension debt, so we probably shouldn't have 2 state fairs. Needs over wants, right? And I want a state fair. I would love the taxpayers to chip in and do a state fair. I think it should be in DuQuoin because Southern Illinois is in desperate need of some tourism, some economic stimulation, because the overtaxation, and the regulations have really disproportionately affected wool farmers in Southern Illinois. So I would make the argument that there's not a need for 2 state fairs. And if we were going to do it, had we addressed our pension debt, had we addressed our budget, had we addressed Chicago crime, I would be all for a DuQuoin State Fair, something in Southern Illinois. It also makes more sense. There's more farming that goes on in Southern Illinois. Not to say that farming doesn't go on in Central Illinois. I would classify Springfield as Central Illinois. I wouldn't say it's downstate Springfield. So I don't know. I just think that DuQuoin is a better chance. There's a better chance to kind of give to local families. There's a better chance for local families to really enjoy the livestock competitions, the carnival rides. I think that there's just more opportunity in Southern Illinois. And, I don't think that a whole lot of Northerners are driving all the way to Springfield from Chicago for a state fair. They're not the types of people who get excited about fried Oreos. Okay. And I don't think that they're really excited about driving south. So anyway, State Senator Terry Bryant, she's in the center square. She talked about how her grandkid showed hogs at the DuQuoin State Fair this year, and that they would have never been able to make it to Springfield because it's like 3 hours away from where her grandkids are at. And I totally get it. Yes, I'm glad her grandkids did it. But the reality is, this is going to ruffle some feathers. You don't solve the state's budget crisis with corn dogs. You just can't do it. So the bigger picture is here that Illinois politicians, they love to play Santa Claus. I say this all the time. They play Santa Claus with your money, and they will always frame it as, oh, it's for the families, it's for the kids. But the truth is, this is just pork politics. It's pork barrel politics, literally. So it's just fluff. Okay. And I'm not against fluff if we had our needs and necessities down necessarily. Now, I will get to this where the private sector could definitely take this over and probably make it better. And like everything, the private sector usually is better at it than the government ever would be. So I'm not necessarily against it, but I think that just giving it over to the private sector and these organizations, I think, and churches, and letting them put on the state fair would probably be better for everybody all the way around. So let's take a step back. You guys know I like to do this, the Christian lens, the Christian worldview, the perspective here. So in the Bible, stewardship is a key theme. Okay, we are called to be wise managers of resources, not wasteful spenders. So Proverbs 21:20 says this: the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Love it. Proverbs 21:20. What is Illinois doing? They are gulping it all down. They are pouring millions into shiny buildings, temporary rides, grounds that sit empty for most of the year. Like, most people don't visit the state fairgrounds, you know, like all year round. Okay, so they mainly sit empty. So meanwhile, our state is drowning in debt. People are fleeing to Indiana, Tennessee, and small businesses are of course suffocating due to the overtaxation. They are suffocating under taxes, under, of course, the energy bills. That's not stewardship. That's foolishness. Okay, so this is just anti-biblical what Illinois is doing, funding these two fairs. We are called to be good stewards and wise managers of our resources, not to gulp down our resources, but to store them up. So I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Kat, the tourism, but the tourism, it boosts the local economy. Okay. The Illinois Department of Agriculture claims that these fairs are critical. They're critical economic engines, is actually what they call them. But let's be honest, because I love honesty here. This is government math. They're really trying to say that there's like this huge economic impact. I just told you the Springfield State Fair. I don't know the local and regional economic impact that the DuQuoin State Fair has. I didn't get those numbers. I know like years ago, it was only like $6 million. Like in 2019, I think was the last one I could find. And like I said, we spent well over $100 million on that. So definitely not working out. Okay, they're not breaking even. $86 million was generated in local economic impact for the Springfield one or something like that. And like I said, it was $140 million that we spent on that in total. So the juice is not worth the squeeze, I guess, is how I would put that. They count every dollar spent as a fair gain. Or as a gain. And so every dollar spent at the fair, and local and regional economic impact is much different than revenue. Okay, so they're counting every single dollar as a gain, every single dollar spent at the fair as a gain. Okay, and your like local hotels of people staying there, they'll count all that, but they'll also ignore the dollars that came from the taxpayers in the first place. Okay, so it's kind of like me. If I were to go into your wallet, steal $20, and hand it back to you, okay, and say, see, I'm stimulating the economy. I'm stimulating your economy. That is what this is like. Okay, so don't forget, when fairs do make money, the government almost never reports the true net. Okay, so let's say they make money or they never even really report the revenue, like the hard revenue. They count the local and regional impact, economic impact, and that is every dollar spent at your hotels. And like, that's not necessarily people there all for the fair, because obviously, people use hotels for different things and they might be there for a different reason. So they are like counting everything that's spent, and not just your hard revenue, not your true net. So they're never going to report that, and they'll say like, oh, we broke even, but they're really massaging the numbers here, and they're not reporting hard revenue, like from ticket sales. Okay, so they don't count all the maintenance, the hidden maintenance costs of maintaining the fairgrounds year round. You got to plow the sidewalks. You got to pay people. There's pensions for fair employees. There's policing that happens at these fairs. The policing alone probably, is enough to not justify this thing, because you got to have tons of police and agencies out there policing, making sure there's, in the grandstands, metal detectors. I mean, this is going to cost a lot of money. The insurance. Okay, so it's all smoke and mirrors. When people say, oh, it breaks even, they're just flat out lying to you. It's not going to break out even. There's no way. There's all kinds of hidden maintenance costs and policing costs and the insurance. And then you have to pay the pensions of the fair employees and the fair state agencies. Like there's a state fair manager. We're paying her. I'm sure she has a nice little pension. Okay. If we were just to take her job away, we'd be saving all kinds of money. So there is a deeper problem here. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up this morning, there is a deeper problem. And this is the government trying to be all things to all people. So let me say that again. This is the government trying to be all things to all people instead of letting communities, churches, local businesses, private organizations run their own festivals in their communities. Springfield wants control of it. They want to fund it, and they want to slap a government stamp on it. And this is the same mentality that says government should run your healthcare, government should run your schools, government should run your farms, even your entertainment. Okay, so the more government does, the less freedom that we have. And fairs are fun, yes, but when they belong in the hands of people like Governor J.B. Pritzker and politicians like J.B. Pritzker, they aren't fun because they take away your freedom. And, nothing screams a good use of taxpayer funds, good use of taxpayer money, like paying $200 million so a politician can cut a ribbon and pose with a cow and eat a corn dog for the cameras. Really, that's what this is all about. This is a chance for Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton to strut around the state fairgrounds with a lemon shake up and a corn dog in her hand to kind of make herself look relatable. That is what the state fair is for. So that is what that's really all about. And, that's not a good use of taxpayer money. And maybe, next year we can fund the governor's cotton candy caucus, or we can create a new department, the Illinois Office of Fried Dough Oversight. Like, what's next here, folks? Like, honestly, this is just a joke. I'm sure that's going to fix the pension crisis if we were to create a new department called the Illinois Office of Fried Dough Oversight. So what's the solution here? Here's my proposal. So come close. Get government out of the fair business altogether. Sell the fairgrounds, lease them to private companies, community foundations, or even church coalitions. Get them involved. They'll want to run the festivals. And if the fairs are really economic engines, like the Department of Ag says, then the private market would be happy to take that over and to keep them going. Okay, but if they can't survive without taxpayer subsidies, and if people really don't like the fair as much as I do, and if that, like, at a large scale, and people don't go to the fair and they can't survive without taxpayer subsidies, then that tells you all you really need to know. And then maybe we don't really need state fairs. Okay, let the market play it out. If it plays out where people don't go, then they're not economic action or engines. They are money pits, and they should probably go anyway. Okay, so without government interference, these fairs might actually be very creative. That's another part of this proposal. You could get more local vendors, more freedom, less bureaucracy, more people out to the fair. With the bureaucracy, with the government approval process of being a vendor at these fairs, you might be deterring some people from participating. If the private sector were to take this over, private market, it might actually get better. There might actually be some competition, more vendors, more local vendors, and it might actually make it better. So Illinois is broke. We are a state on life support. Okay, yet politicians like Governor J.B. Pritzker keep acting like we are swimming in cash, and they waste millions on projects like fairs. And we've got families out here struggling under crushing taxes, skyrocketing utility bills. And friends, it's time that we wake up. We don't need a Springfield State Fair. We really don't need a DuQuoin State Fair. We don't need any state fairs at all. We need fiscal responsibility, liberty, and real leadership. Let the free market handle the funnel cakes, okay, and let the politicians stick to the fixing the mess, really, that they created. That should be their priority, is fixing the mess that they've created, And it starts with the pension crisis, to be honest with you. Okay, I got to take a quick break, but smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and we will be right back. Go ahead, send your super chats. I will get to those here next. When we come back, you guys are going to really like this. We are going to be talking about RFK Jr. So he's under a lot of heat right now. The Senate wants him to come and testify and kind of justify before them why he fired the CDC director and why some CDC resignations followed after that. So we're going to get to that here in just a little bit. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'll be right back.
Sometimes God stops you cold, not with a whisper, with a punch to the soul. Saul wasn't looking for Jesus. He was hunting Christians. He had power, position, and a mission. Then God knocked him to the dirt, a light from heaven, a voice that knew his name. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? That moment wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was a spiritual ambush. God still works like that. He steps into your mess, interrupts your pride, confronts the man you've become when you're wandered too far. Maybe you're building your own kingdom. Maybe your fists are up, fighting battles God never called you to. Or maybe you're just running hard in the wrong direction. But then comes the voice, clear, heavy, holy. Why are you persecuting me? Jesus doesn't want your behavior fixed. He wants your heart surrendered. Saul didn't get a lecture. He got a mission. Get up, go to the city. You'll be told what to do. That's the way of real manhood in the kingdom. Surrender first, then orders. You don't need every answer right now. You need to obey the voice. Follow the light. Rise up off the dirt and walk the road God lays out for you. Some roads break you to rebuild you, and that's exactly what Jesus wants. You want to train like a warrior? You need fuel like one. Patriot Pump is clean, powerful pre-workout that won't let you quit halfway. Just like the mission God gives you, it's not about the hype. It's about the grit. Fuel up, lock in, get after it.
Hey, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate it. Yes, I'm in a different studio. I am on vacation. I went to go visit some family down south, traveled the state of Illinois. It's a beautiful state. It really is. It takes a long time to travel the state. But I don't care how long it takes. I don't think that we should be spending $200 million on state fairs. The justification here for 2 state fairs is that, the state of Illinois has a large geographical area, and we need 2 state fairs because you can't travel that distance. And I get it, but folks, we've got a pension debt. We've got budget deficits every single year. We can't really balance a budget. They raise your taxes to balance these budgets. So-called balance these budgets. And then we've got crime in Chicago. So yeah, there's no justification for 2 state fairs to be taxpayer funded at that. Just leave it up to the private sector. All right. Today we are talking about something that should really shake every Illinoisan awake. The destruction of small businesses in our state. And I talk about this often on the show, but I do have new U.S. Census Bureau data. Got this from Center Square, the numbers. So it shows that Illinois has the 3rd lowest business survival rate in the Midwest. So just 5.6% of business applications here actually turn into real functioning businesses within a year. Okay, so that's well below the national average. Okay, and I love numbers. The numbers tell the truth. Okay, the U.S. Census Bureau shows Illinois has the 3rd lowest business survival rate in the Midwest. Okay, and just 5.6% of business applications. So you apply for the business loan or license or whatever, and just 5% of those, a little over 5%, turn into real functioning businesses within a year. So below the national average, below our neighbors, and way below what a thriving economy should look like. We are just not functioning the way we should in order to have a thriving economy. And why is that? Well, State Representative Brad Holbrook says Illinois has become its own worst enemy, to quote him out of the center square. Let's start with the facts. So Illinois has lost 218 businesses to other states just last year. So that's 218 businesses left the state completely to go to a different state. And since 1994, I've got these numbers. The total number lost is 2,616. So we've lost 2,616 businesses since 1994. Okay, and here's the kicker. That number has tripled since the pandemic. Okay, so the pandemic made things way worse, obviously. But, since 1994, this has really become a problem where businesses are leaving the state. Think about that. Families are here trying to open up shops, farms, repair businesses, mechanic shops, restaurants. And instead of rolling out the red carpet for these people who really make Illinois function, Springfield, rolls out the tax code. And instead of welcoming entrepreneurs, Democrats in Springfield suffocate them with regulation, licensing fees, mandates, and the nation's highest property taxes. So we should be rolling out the red carpet for these folks. They are the engine. They are the backbone. These families are the backbone of the state, or at least they should be. And Illinois ranks number 1 in property taxes. We rank number 2 in gas taxes. And people are wondering why. Why are people leaving to states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee? Why are they leaving? State Representative Brad Holbrook, he hit the nail on the head. He said, quote, "Everything that the Democrat majority does leads to higher costs, more regulation, and more restriction." He's right. Every spring and every fall, there's something called the state legislative session. And they come together, the Democrat supermajority, and they meet in Springfield, and they crank out another pile of anti-business laws. And really, they claim like these anti-business laws are for equity or safety or fairness. Okay, for example, I think on Friday, if you guys check out that show, it's archived, I talked about how the state is now requiring a Department of Financial and Professional Regulation or Records. They do the licensing. I'm blanking on the agency name, but they're requiring that agency to ask questions of behavioral health specialists, like, hey, when do you plan on retiring? What retirement age? Or like, when do you plan on retiring? And then they also want to ask them, like, what skin color they have. Okay. Those types of things. That's demographic data when they go to apply for their license. You are making people uncomfortable. That's a form of regulation, a form of oversight over this licenses where it's already hard to get a license, probably as a behavioral health specialist or behavioral health therapist. I know that massage therapists, we spoke with one, the show's archived, the interview. You guys can check it out on YouTube, hit videos, and you'll be able to find that one. But we talked with her, and every year it cost her like $200 to get a license to do massage therapy in Illinois. That's a huge expense. So the licensing is already pretty stringent, pretty strict, and they pile more and more of these anti-business rules and regulations on these businesses every single fall and spring, and they do it in the name of equity. So, for example, the behavioral health specialist licenses, gathering that demographic data, it's more regulation. You're kind of making it a little bit more difficult for people, or people more uncomfortable in that line of work. Hey, I don't really want to give you my retirement age because I'm afraid that, if I'm 60 and I'm just starting out and I want to retire in 5 years, you won't hire or give me my license. And, that's age discrimination. It opens up the door potentially. not to mention the data breaches, that have happened in the Secretary of State's office by Alexei Janulius's own admission, the IDES, the Illinois Department of Employment Security. So there's been data breaches, and like people are hesitant to give their personal information out to these agencies already. But they mandated it that this agency collect that kind of stuff or ask the question of these license applicants. So, and they did that all in the name of equity, for example. Okay, like, oh, we want to make it more equitable, the industry. Okay, so that's just an example. They do this, they pile on these anti-business laws in the name of equity, safety, and fairness. But in reality, it's really about power and control, because the more government or the more dependent businesses are on the government's approval, the more politicians can act like gatekeepers. Okay, so I'm going to gatekeep and decide who gets a license, who doesn't, who gets to thrive, who doesn't. And a lot of people just wind up getting buried in paperwork. So, that statistic, like 5% of businesses get started here in the state of Illinois. Like they send in the applications, and then they're like only 5% of them actually turn into real functioning businesses. So a lot of that can happen at the licensing process, like during the licensing process, and then they're buried in paperwork, okay, under this paperwork, and they just never start. They never start their business. So that's not very pro entrepreneurship. It's not pro freedom. This is feudalism with a bureaucratic smile. So let's bring this in via a biblical lens. I like to do this here. Be sure to subscribe. This is the show where, hey, scripture already talks about this kind of stuff. So Proverbs 29:2 says this: when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. And when the wicked rule, the people mourn. So friends, the people are mourning in Illinois. Businesses are being crushed, dreams are being strangled, and families are being forced out. Why? Because the wicked, corrupt, and greedy leadership that has taken over. And God's design is for work to be a blessing. Okay, this is something that you should take pride in, something that builds your community, whatever you wind up doing, something that sustains your family, something that glorifies God. Work is supposed to be a blessing. But when the government makes honest work impossible, okay, they don't want you to do honest work. They don't want you to open up a mechanic shop. They don't want you to farm. They don't want you to do something that's honest. They want you to kind of go into the nonprofit sector and get taxpayer subsidies. Okay, they don't want you to actually work for a living, because God's design for work is supposed to be a blessing to your life. And the nonprofit public sector suckling at the government teat, the taxpayers' teat, that is not what the way God designed it work. That is not the way He designed it. And they punish success and they reward dependency. They want you to be dependent. They want you to do nothing and have no fulfillment. And it's really sinning against God's design for work and what it's supposed to look like. So, hey, don't worry, though. Governor J.B. Pritzker has a plan. He'll tax your business into the ground, regulate it until you choke, and then cut a ribbon at an economic development press conference. He holds these all the time. Politicians hold these all the time. You probably have a local chamber of commerce, right? And they do these stupid little ribbon cuttings, and it's so gay. But they brag about all the jobs, right? And yada, yada, yada. Really, what's going on here, it's kind of like an arsonist. If an arsonist were to set fire to your house, come out with a garden hose, and the arsonist starts thanking you for, or starts demanding you thank him for putting out the fire, okay, with this little garden hose. So these press conferences, a lot of them center around tax credits for these large corporations. For example, Rivian or Goshen, the electric vehicle battery maker, or some of these quantum computing companies that aren't even really companies quite yet. They're kind of startups. He gives all kinds of tax credits to these people, corporations. And he calls that economic development. They might bring like maybe a couple hundred jobs, if that, right? And then he sits there and says that he's all pro economy and he's bringing in jobs. Um, but we're not imagining the suffering here and the exodus of businesses. This is not an imagination thing. People are voting with their feet and their businesses. They're taking their businesses to Florida. They're taking their businesses to Texas, to Tennessee. Why those states? Because those states believe in freedom. They believe in entrepreneurship. They don't bury entrepreneurs in mountains of red tape. They don't see businesses as piggy banks to fund bloated government. So they literally see the private sector. And like I've always talked about, these are nerdy people you didn't really talk to in high school. They sat together and like were like furries at the lunch table, right? I hate to say this, but this is so freaking true. They sat at a lunch table all together and they like plotted their revenge. And this is their revenge on like the cool people who actually wanted to like start businesses, start families, and wanted to do something with their lives. These people are, it's like the revenge of the nerds, what's going on. So they see your business as a piggy bank. They're taking revenge out on you for the way you treated them, although you were always really nice to them at school. But they wanted to be weird. They wanted to go and be by themselves because they wanted to be different, right? And like now they're, seeing you as a piggy bank and they're taking revenge out on you and they're funding an entire economy, like a dual economy. So they understand that when you let people keep more of their money, they spend it, they hire, and they invest. They don't understand that. Like, we just need to let people keep their money and that will fix everything. Okay. They'll spend it, they'll hire people, that'll create jobs, they'll invest. So where are businesses fleeing from? Illinois, California, New York, Maryland, the progressive utopias. So it's a pattern that's so obvious, only a politician could pretend not to see it. Okay. This is a pattern. They're leaving progressive utopias for free states, for states that aren't taking revenge out on the private sector. So let's pause here and think about the personal cost, because I gave you a lot of numbers. I think it was like 2,000 plus businesses that left since 1994. And then he had 218 just in the last year businesses leave the state of Illinois. So I want to talk about the personal cost, because a lot of this can get kind of lost in the numbers and not really think about it. But there's a personal cost. Behind every closed business statistic is a family. Okay, a father who wants to pass down his shop to his son, a mom who wants to open a bakery and provide for her family and for her kids, a farmer who is just trying to keep the land for his family and pass it down one more generation. Like, these are real people. Okay, that 218 number just in the last year, those are real people, and there's a personal cost here, because thanks to Springfield, their margins shrink, their costs go up, and they have to raise prices just to survive. So their customers leave because their prices are so high, and then their dreams die, and another for sale sign goes up on Main Street. I know that a lot of us live in these smaller communities in Illinois. That's the thing. There's a Main Street, and there used to be all kinds of businesses, but now you walk down that street and there's a bunch of for sale signs. So this isn't just about economics. This is spiritual. This is spiritual warfare. The family is under attack. And this is just another, this isn't just about whether Illinois is going to be a place, or this is about how Illinois should be a place for people to live, work, and thrive. Okay. This is what this is about. And what makes me angry is that the same politicians that kill these small businesses, they brag about attracting these big corporations, okay, with the tax incentives. Like I was talking about earlier, Goshen, Rivian, these quantum computing companies, some of these startups that aren't even really businesses, they brag about, these tax incentives and how it's stirring up economic development. And Governor J.B. Pritzker does these press conferences, these economic development press conferences. So what they'll do, they'll strangle Joe's hardware store. Okay. But then they cut a sweetheart deal with Amazon or some CCP linked battery company like Goshen. Why? Because guess what? These small businesses, they don't participate in politics, and these business owners, they don't fund campaigns. They don't got the money to, spend, $1 million on Governor J.B. Pritzker's campaign. Okay. The big corporations do, though. They've got that money to waste. And, this isn't economic policy. What's going on in the state of Illinois? It is a shakedown racket. Okay. They are shaking you down. And the victims here are the families who have built Illinois with their sweat, with their savings, and with their prayers. So what do we do from here? We keep sounding the alarm. We can't let people get numb to this decline that has been going on in Illinois for a long time. Second, we fight for policies that actually honor work. And that means that we have to lower property taxes, reduce regulation, have a simpler tax code, and end this two-faced system where Springfield crushes these mom and pop shops, and then they bribe essentially these Fortune 500 companies to come here with taxpayer incentives. So we need leaders to have courage, leaders who understand that freedom and faith should be a priority, not bureaucracy, and that freedom and faith are the real engines of prosperity. Faith, family, and freedom. Those are the real engines of prosperity. So Illinois is bleeding, businesses are leaving, families are struggling, and politicians keep telling you everything's fine. Look over here at this ribbon cutting ceremony where we brought 100 jobs or whatever, but we spent millions in taxpayer incentives. The simple truth is this: we can't tax our way out of this. We can't regulate our way out of this. We can't spend our way out of this and spend our way into prosperity. We need to repent as a state. And I say that because what we really have been doing, the supermajority, the Democrats, politicians, Illinois rhinos, what they've been doing is they have taken, they've spit all over God's design for work. And we need to start embracing liberty and repent and return to God's design for work, which is, hey, honesty, make an honest living. All right. I got to take a quick break. But we are going to come back, and I promise that we are going to talk about RFK Jr. because there is a shakeup going on at the CDC. So this shakeup was only made possible by RFK Jr., the man, the myth, the legend, Human Health Services Secretary, RFK Jr. And this has been playing out, and it's kind of fascinating. Republicans and Democrat senators, they didn't want RFK to get this nomination in the beginning. I remember this. They fought like hell, and they opposed this guy's nomination for HHS. And the Republicans eventually fell in line, and they, confirmed him. And that's all we kind of really needed because we had the majority. But thank God we got the Republicans to kind of fall in line. But there's a storm a brewing, okay? And I don't know if the Republicans will keep their allegiance to Donald Trump in the MAHA agenda, the Make America Healthy Again agenda. I don't know if their allegiance is going to hold up because they really didn't want to nominate these Republicans. And by Republicans, I mean rhino jackwagons, pissants, okay? They really didn't want to confirm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the beginning. So I'm not optimistic that they are going to stay loyal to the MAHA agenda or to President Donald Trump just because they have an R next to their name. So I'm going to talk about the recent firing that happened. CDC Director Susan Monarez. Okay, so she was recently fired by Kennedy because she would not align her goals with RFK Jr.'s MAHA goals. And what really this came down to was she would not remove the COVID mRNA vaccine from the childhood vaccine schedule. Okay. And she's just overall resistant to the MAHA goals. So that's why this lady was fired. But I'm really worried because, you've got Republicans now who are coming out and playing around with Bernie Sanders and his calls to, remove RFK Jr. or question him before the Senate. So this is kind of concerning. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. Like and subscribe. Hey, you're listening to the Conservative Cat Clips. This is the place where we don't call 911 first. Nope, we pray, we prepare, and yes, we pack heat. Every time there's a tragedy, the media and the Democrats, they start crying, do something, do something, and do something. And what they mean is more laws, more bans, and more restrictions, not on criminals, mind you, but on law-abiding citizens. So let me tell you what evil doesn't care about. They don't care about legislation. The man willing to break the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder, doesn't blink twice at your AR-15 ban. Okay, he doesn't read your gun-free zone signs. He sees those signs and he says, this is an invitation for me. Gun control doesn't stop evil. It disarms good people. The founding fathers didn't give us the Second Amendment so we could go hunting. They gave us the Second Amendment to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And newsflash, tyrants don't tend to announce themselves. They come wearing smiles and waving around fancy policies. And I also want to talk about self-defense today. Self-defense. The average police response time in big cities like Chicago could be up to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. I know the Chicago PD is really struggling with that. Response times in rural areas, it could get up to even 30 minutes response time. So if somebody kicks down your door, are you going to ask them to wait until the government sends backup to protect you, or are you going to protect your family and take matters into your own hands? So grandma, in Peoria, Illinois, she is just trying to defend her property, but yet she's the one treated like a criminal. She has to go through all kinds of crazy background checks, permits, training. And the thug in Chicago, he gets the gun out of his trunk in an alley, and he didn't think twice about our laws, okay? It's about power. It always has been. Every dictatorship in history has disarmed their citizens first. First, that's Stalin, that's Hitler, that's Mao. They didn't want competition. And once the guns were gone, so were the rights, the freedom, and the people. So a disarmed people is a controlled people. But an armed, faithful, and free people, that is a nightmare for tyrants. And really, it's a blessing to your neighbors if you are armed. The Second Amendment isn't outdated. It's eternal. And just like evil, just like our right, just like the evil has the right to do evil things, and that they will, we have the right to resist evil and to arm ourselves. And the Second Amendment is pretty dang clear, shall not be infringed. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate you tuning in. Let me get to some of your comments here. The CDC, the WHO, HHS, they all mislead us. Look what they did. They completely ruined nearly every mom and pop shop that ever existed due to totally unwarranted COVID mandates. Yeah, and that is right where we're headed. The GOP fence blockers are only interested in public opinion instead of actually doing the job that they were originally sent there to go do. Votes are the only currency that runs the GOP. Hey, I appreciate it. And I'm really nervous about this. That's why I'm bringing this up. Because I remember, I'm not that old. I remember when RFK was going through the Senate confirmation hearings. This was kind of recent. The Senate confirmation hearings, Republicans and Democrats alike, they really vehemently opposed his nominations. But eventually the Republicans fell in line because guess what? Trump is popular. Maha is popular with the electorate. And like you said, the only currency they know is really votes and staying in office. But I don't know how much this is going to last, or how long this is going to last, how long they're going to stay, loyal to Trump and Maha. Because guess what? Now, Big Pharma is, pulling dollars from some of these campaign coffers of Republicans and Democrats alike. So let's talk about this. Kennedy, he recently fired this woman, CDC Director Susan Monarez, and she refused to align herself with Kennedy's goals here, okay, with MAHA goals, really. Make America healthy again goals. The whole reason why I think Donald Trump was elected was because he, announced this announced that he would make RFK Jr. HHS secretary, or the Human Health Services secretary. And, people really like MAHA. They like the idea of getting chemicals out of their food. They like the idea of, I don't know, testing the childhood vaccine schedule to make sure that, these are all necessary vaccines for children to be getting. So people like all of this. Like I'd say it's like an 80-20 issue, not even like maybe 90-10. Like definitely getting red 40 out of food. That was like a 90-10 issue. People really don't like chemicals in their food. Okay. So this woman, Susan, she would not hop on the bandwagon here of removing the mRNA COVID vaccine from the childhood vaccine schedule. And overall, she's just kind of resistant to the MAHA agenda. Okay. So she lawyered up, this lady, Susan Monarez. She lawyered up, and then she took, of course, to the favorite legacy media, the Washington Post, and she declared that I'm not really fired. And that Kennedy is a danger to public health. So here's what's going on. She's trying to kind of usurp Kennedy as HHS. I mean, he oversees, the CDC is an HHS secretary. What she's doing by proclaiming that she's not really fired, what she's trying to do is delegitimize his leadership role and kind of usurp him, okay, using the favored legacy media such as the Washington Post. So following her firing, 3 chief CDC officials, they put in their resignation. Woohoo! I'm sorry. Forgive me if I'm not just like jumping for joy. Forgive me for jumping for joy. I am like so excited. So this firing triggered some more jack wagons to get out of there. So Dan Jernigan, he's the National Center for Emerging Zoonotic Infectious Diseases. Or he's like a chief medical officer, or he's a director there. And then Deb Howry, she was the chief medical officer. And then Dimitri Deskalakis, I think I'm saying that right, but he's the BDSM like guy. Like he's all about like the leather straps. I'll show you a picture here in just a second of him, but he was the openly gay bondage, like BDSM advocate. Okay, so you might know him better as the monkeypox czar. Do you guys remember this guy? Hold on, let me pull this up. You guys are gonna get a kick out of this, Bella. So this was the guy that served in the Biden administration. He left because this woman was fired, Susan. Okay, so let's take a look at this fella. You guys remember him? He's in BDSM gear. Here we go. He was the monkeypox czar. Here he is. Dimitri or whatever his name is. I don't know. That's him. Okay, so oh man, forgive me for not shedding a tear. I'm so torn up about this Dimitri and how he's, gone now and how he put in his resignation. However, will America survive? Okay, so he was the openly gay bondage advocate under President Joe Biden, known as the monkeypox czar. Okay. Monkeypox, you only get it if you're gay. Sorry. There. Figured it out. There's a preventative out there. Okay. So you only get it if you're gay. Monkeypox. Not that hard. Sorry, Dimitri. Your whole entire job of monkeypox czar was kind of like can be summed up in one sentence. Being gay causes monkeypox. Okay. So he was making his rounds on social media or on legacy media, the Dimitri fellow, the guy with the BDSM gear, okay, and worked for Joe Biden. He was making his rounds and he was, trashing Kennedy and Donald Trump and the Trump administration for making this all about politics. How dare he make this all about politics, RFK Jr., which isn't like wanting to test vaccines and remove certain vaccines because you have evidence from the childhood vaccine schedule. That's not about politics, that's about science. But anyway, this Dimitri fellow, he also needs the public to know, apparently, that Kennedy is an existential threat to the survivability of the CDC and the health and safety of all Americans. So he went on his legacy media rounds. There's been a lot going on. Okay. So we had her, she was a very short-lived director, by the way. She was promoted to CDC director, and she only worked there for 30 days, and then she wouldn't hop on the Maha bandwagon. So that is what prompted the firing. So she made it abundantly clear that she was not interested in collaborating with RFK Jr. on his Maha agenda, and once it became clear that she was, out and that she was fired. And once it became clear, RFK made it clear, hey, this is no longer going to be a personal playground, but this is going to be the federal government, and we are going to, do good by the American people, and we are going to make the American healthy people, or Americans healthy again. Once that became the vision, she wanted no part of it, and like RFK was like, okay, you're fired. And then the three other officials, including Dr. Monkeypox there, they resigned. Okay, now you're up to speed. Now, to go back to last week, something happened that I didn't cover. This was kind of crazy. 750 CDC employees sent out a letter to RFK Jr., okay, and Congress. And they pretty much accused RFK of contributing to, quote, harassment and violence against government employees because someone who, either rightly or wrongly, I'm not here to argue that this morning, he went in, he took aim at, like, quite literally with a rifle, 180 rifle rounds into the CDC headquarters. Okay. Now, this guy, very troubled, from what I understood and read about briefly. And that's not what today's story is about. I want to talk about RFK because him being out of there is not good for the American people. And they're really trying to go after him. They're out for blood, the Senate, Republicans and Democrats alike. That's what I want to talk about today. But this guy, rightly or wrongly, he blamed the CDC for health problems, severe health problems that this guy had, tragedy. And he went in and, not justifying, okay, in any kind of way, spraying the CDC headquarters with bullets, okay, screw tube. Like, I'm not advocating for violence here. But, I mean, it has yet to be known if there is any merit to this guy's accusations here about how the CDC caused his health problems, okay? I'm not sure if he was right or wrong on that, whether the CDC caused his health problems, but he ultimately killed himself. So he killed a DeKalb County police officer, total tragedy, before killing himself. So this happened. So now we've got 750 CDC officials writing this letter. And I'll get to that letter here in just a second, but I want to talk about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, the Democrat from Vermont, is particularly, got his panties kind of in a bunch here, in my opinion. He's calling for an investigation into the firing of Susan. So he is the chairman and ranking, the chairman of this. He's not the chairman, Bernie Sanders, but he's a ranking member in the Senate Health, Education, and Labor Pensions Committee at the U.S. Senate. Okay. So there's a committee here, and the chairman and he are kind of calling for this investigation into the firing. And I'll get to this because I think the chairman at this point is Cassidy. Let me double check that, but I'll get to Cassidy here in just a second. Sorry, I'm jumping around. Bernie Sanders, okay, he's pushing for a, quote, bipartisan investigation into the firing of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention Director Susan Monarez, which prompted the resignations of other senior leaders at the agency. The ranking member of the Senate Health, so this is Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, he's the ranking member, not the chairman. Okay, I want to get to the chairman here in just a second. Bill Cassidy, who's a Republican. He's a Republican. So he said, he pointed to the statements, Bernie Sanders, of the former CDC officials, where they say that RFK Jr. was putting political pressure on the agency. Okay, so the disgruntled employees are saying, oh, RFK politically pressured us. Okay, whatever. Here's what Sanders wrote to the committee chairman, Bill Cassidy, who is a Republican. Okay, Kennedy is pushing out scientific leaders who refuse to act as a rubber stamp for his dangerous conspiracy theories and manipulate science. Enough is enough. We got to make it clear to Secretary Kennedy that his actions to double down on his war on science and disinformation campaign must end. Too many lives are at stake. That's what Sanders wrote to the chairman, who is a Republican, Bill Cassidy. Now, if I was a Republican and if I was Bill Cassidy, well, let me ask you, if you were in Bill Cassidy's shoes, what would you say to that stupid little letter that Sanders wrote just now that I quoted? Okay, throw it in the comment section. Here's what Cassidy's office actually did. They didn't respond to a request for comment, but the senator, Bill Cassidy, who's a Republican out of Louisiana, did post on X that this matter would require oversight by the committee. What? So Cassidy, a medical doctor, previously, like I said, the Republicans they really fell in line. They stayed loyal to Trump and the Maha agenda, and they did ultimately, they kind of had their arms tucked behind their their backs, and they were like, fine, whatever, we'll go ahead and confirm RFK, but they didn't want to, because guess what? Republicans and Democrats, they all get big pharma money. Okay. So ultimately that's really what it was. Now Cassidy, he says that, he had these reservations. He expressed reservations, I should say, about Kennedy's nomination because of the misinformation and because of the misinformation surrounding the vaccines, the spread that he's had a part in for years. Okay. So-called misinformation. Okay. But he agreed to support him after receiving several commitments from RFK Jr. Related to vaccines. Okay. So Sanders specifically requested that Kennedy, Monarez, Susan Monarez, the fired CDC director, and the CDC officials who resigned testify at a hearing. Okay. So Kennedy is scheduled to testify before the Senate Finance Committee. Okay, so the Senate is out for blood for Kennedy's blood here. Okay, so I want to get to this. This is shocking stuff. This came out. It was an essay. It was published in the New York Times. Really gay opinion guest essay. Okay. In my opinion. So it was signed by acting and former CDC directors, confirmed CDC directors of the past. This is an essay that was signed. And here's the essay title. I'm going to throw it in the comment section. We ran the CDC. Kennedy is endangering every American's health. These people are such elitist little hacks. They think that they are entitled. The sense of entitlement here. I don't know, but this title reads like, Mom, I need my allowance. I don't know why, but it just reads so entitledly, and yeah, it's just total bogus. But so they wrote this essay, and it was titled, "We ran the CDC, and Kennedy is endangering Americans." And of course, the New York Times published it because gay. But so it aligns, obviously, this essay with the talking points coming from Susan Monarez. Okay, so this is really just, her disgruntled letter because she was fired. So she, in my opinion, she probably got together with all of her pals, these elitist pals, and they got together and they were like, let's put an essay out in the New York Times. So the signees are William Foyge. I might be butchering these names. I don't really care. They're hacks anyway. Now, these people come from Democrat and Republican administrations dating back to the late 1970s. up to the Biden administration. Okay, so nobody under the Trump administration, like anybody, under the Trump, but William Foyge, William Rapper, David Satcher, Jeffrey Kaplan, Richard Besser, Tom Frieden, Ann Schuchat, Rochelle Walensky, and Mandy K. Cohen. So, like I said, a bunch of like former bureaucrats. Okay. What Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has done to the CDC, and this is what they say in the letter here, or the essay that they published in the New York Times. Okay. What he has done to the CDC and to our nation's public health system over the past several months, culminating his decision to fire Susan Monarez as CDC director days ago, is unlike anything we've ever seen at the agency and unlike anything our country has ever experienced. Well, I'm not going to disagree with them there. Right? Kennedy is doing something totally unprecedented. Namely, what he is actually doing is returning public health back to the Americans. Really, I mean, he is returning it to actual care and to an actual resource for Americans. That is what he's doing at the CDC. He wants to make it an actual resource and provide actual care to Americans through the CDC. And yes, that is unprecedented because in the past, up to this point, what the CDC has been used for is really it's an experimental, they use Americans as experimental fodder for world agencies and their globalist agendas. That is what the CDC has been used for up to this point. So what he is doing is unprecedented. I'll give them that. The letter goes on, or the essay in the New York Times goes on that they published. Secretary Kennedy has fired thousands of federal health workers. Health workers. How could you do this? Thousands of federal workers. Severely weakened programs designed to protect Americans from cancer, heart attacks, strokes, lead poisoning, injury, violence, and more. Amid the largest measles outbreak in the United States in a generation, he's focused on unproven treatments while downplaying vaccines. He's canceled investments in promising medical research that will leave us ill, prepared for future health emergencies. He's replaced experts on Federal Health Advisory Committee with unqualified individuals who share his dangerous unscientific views. He announced the end of U.S. support for global vaccination programs to protect millions of children and keep Americans safe, citing flawed research and inaccurate statements. He has championed federal legislation that will cause millions of people with health insurance through Medicaid to lose coverage, firing Susan Monarez, which led to the resignation of top CDC officials, adds considerable fuel to this raging fire. That is what they wrote in the New York Times and what New York Times published. Actually, the CDC has been severely weakened for decades, and they have failed to protect Americans' health, especially the health of children. Kat, how can you come out and say that? Well, I'll tell you, there is a chronic disease epidemic in this country, and it plagues this nation. And this is all played out under their watches. Okay, so these top three CDC officials, this woman who actually served under CDC Director Rochelle Walensky, Susan Monarez, she was a ranking official at the CDC during the reign of Rochelle Walensky during the COVID period. Okay, she was actually recently named in a lawsuit, by the way, that targets CDC childhood immunizations program. The lawsuit targets that. So this is so apparent, like that the CDC has failed the American people. Just as somebody had pointed out in the comment section, like the COVID mandates that were totally unwarranted. I mean, the list goes on. They have never been for the American people. And how do I know that? The results. Look at the results here. There is a chronic disease epidemic. More kids are fat, okay, obese, and you've got people sicker than ever. So let's get to the lawsuit here. So she's named Monarez Susan, along with Rochelle Walensky in this lawsuit. So two doctors lost their medical licenses because they questioned the CDC vaccine recommendations. Now, I don't have COVID vaccine. I never got one. I've contracted COVID once, I have natural immunity. It's lasted me since I contracted COVID, I think in 2020. And I mean, I got it pretty bad. It sucked. But I was young. I was fine. And to be honest with you, I probably got it because I was smoking at the time. I don't smoke anymore. Thank God. Praise the Lord. But CDC, vaccine recommendations, they say like, oh, get your booster. The vaccine, I think, in my, with my two eyes, with my 2 ears, I've heard people talk about how they have the vaccine and they actually contract COVID more than I ever have, right? And this is the case for many Americans. They're seeing reality play out before them. And they have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and they're hearing and seeing what's going on actually. So anyway, these two doctors, what they did, they questioned the vaccines. Okay, all they did was question the COVID vaccine recommendations specifically for kids. Okay, so they weren't even questioning it for adults. They just said, hey, do kids really need this? They're usually pretty healthy. And kids don't really contract COVID. Okay, remember, it was the elderly and people with comorbidities and people who were smoking were more susceptible to contracting COVID-19. Okay, so they're suing the agency for failing to test the effect of the 72 dose schedule on children's health. Okay, so 72 doses. So I know that's going to floor some of you because a lot of you don't know this, but if you've had children, you've got them the full 72 dose schedule, you would know this. There are 72 doses, needles going into your kids' arms. That is what is recommended by the CDC. And what these two doctors, Dr. Paul Thomas and Kenneth Stoller, what they're saying is, hey, they haven't even tested the effect that this 72 dose vaccine schedule has on children. So those two doctors and this coalition, it's called Stand for Health Freedom. They filed a lawsuit last week in federal court alleging that there was a lack of safety testing, and this lack of safety testing actually violates federal law and children's constitutional rights. So the lawsuit actually names, and the reason why I brought this up, names Susan Monarez, sorry. So they name her in her official capacity as the CDC director. Attorney Rick Jafe, he is representing the plaintiffs here in this case. So he's not representing Susan. He's representing those two doctors and the coalition Stand for Health Freedom. He said that the lawsuit goes at the heart of the CDC's childhood immunization program. It is a 72 plus, so it's even more than 72 doses, 72 plus dose medical intervention schedule that has never been truly tested. And we don't know what kind of effect all of those doses have on children together. And those tests have never been done. So the arrogance really and the self-importance, like these three officials and Susan, they've kind of made themselves like, we're the most important people, right? They've got this self-importance entitlement. And that essay in the New York Times highlights it beautifully, how entitled they think that they are. But the self-importance and the arrogance of the CDC bureaucrats is beyond belief to me. The reality is that the U.S. would have been better off without the CDC, with no CDC during the pandemic, at least, okay? So their performance was a Chernobyl level catastrophe, in my opinion. And a lot of Americans believe this. Their incompetence delayed the start of widespread testing at least a month. Okay, so they didn't do widespread testing on COVID vaccinations, and they delayed that for at least a month. They delayed all of this testing, and that led to panicked lockdowns. Okay. They should have just waited and tested and tried to figure out what kind of effects COVID has on people before they issued the lockdowns, but they prematurely issued mandates and lockdowns without doing widespread testing and trying to really figure out if that 6-foot rule, the social distancing, that was totally arbitrary. They didn't do any tests to come up with that. These were arbitrary lockdown mandates and arbitrary mandates. The masking mandates, that was all arbitrary. They didn't even do the testing. They delayed that, but they issued the mandates before doing any of that testing. They forced useless masks over the faces of children for years. They misinformed the public on safety and efficacy of vaccines. And they created a rationale for really illegal mandates that divided this country. Okay, I don't know about you, but I lost friends over COVID. I lost, relationships over COVID. Not because of me, but because really they didn't like my position on it. If I showed up at a family function or a friend function without a mask on and they asked me to wear a mask, I said no. And boom, friendship over, relationship over, because they're deranged leftist. So it really divided the country. Okay, the illegal mandates, and they created this rationale not from testing, like I said, but they just pulled it out of their asses. Okay, so they cannot credibly argue that the CDC has saved a single life or saved a single life during COVID due to their actions. Okay, they can't argue that. And their message is always based on fear mongering. So you'll hear these, CDC, these people who signed on to this essay in the New York Times. What they're doing is fear mongering, okay? Because that's all they're good at. That's all that they know. That's all that they have. It's fear mongering. They fear monger over unknown disease threats, infectious disease threats. They say that RFK is a conspiracy theorist. And they've really learned nothing from the pandemic. Okay. If anything, it's clear that none of these people have learned anything from the pandemic. The CDC failures, like I said, they weren't really just about health. They carried massive financial and social costs. People lost friends because they divided the country so much over these illegal mandates. The lockdowns, they of course crushed small businesses. We lost that number tripled. Okay, the number of businesses that left the state of Illinois for other states. Since 1994, it was 2,616 businesses have left the state. The number of businesses that left the state during the pandemic, those numbers constantly that tripled. So businesses were leaving. Kids lost years of their education. And like I said, the mandates themselves divided the nation. So America needs institutions that protect, lives and livelihoods. Okay, not just but livelihoods. And they don't need agencies and institutions that are driven by fear and politics. So what they did in the New York Times, because it's legacy media and it's Democrat favored, they are really playing politics and with this stupid little essay that they did. So this essay, really, it kind of reads like, if you were to read it, I didn't read the whole thing, I read parts of it. It reminds me so much of remember those 51 intelligence officials who came out and they signed a letter confirming that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Turns out it wasn't Russian disinformation and it was real. That's what this essay kind of reminds me of. They're the ones who are politicizing and fear-mongering and causing division. What RFK Jr. is trying to do is really just return the agency to the public. That's what he's trying to do. These people have made it their personal political playground, the CDC, the agency itself. And he said, no, we're done with that. We are making America healthy again, and we are returning the agency to the true resource that it is supposed to be for the people. Okay, so this letter also kind of makes me think that Susan and her legal team, they are setting the table here. And this is wrong, outright just unethical, in my opinion. If Susan is doing this, I don't know, right? Susan Monarez, the former CDC director who was fired by RFK. I don't know if her and her legal team are kind of facilitating through legacy media, through the New York Times essay, this Senate oversight hearing. Okay, so they got all kinds of people to sign on to this essay, like stretching back to the 1970s administrations, Republican administrations, and Democrat administrations leading up to the Biden administration. So now Republicans, see this, and it's all about public opinion, right? I mean, some of these people who signed on, they're Republicans, they're served under Republican administrations, and you got weak-kneed Republicans like Bill Cassidy, who are out there, and they're playing right into Susan and her legal team's hands here. And they're now going to be doing this oversight hearing. And I just don't think it's right. So now we also have this Democrat. Like I said, Kennedy is scheduled to go before the Senate Finance Committee, I think tomorrow. Yeah, no, Thursday. So we've got this Democrat here. I've already talked about Bill Cassidy, Bernie Sanders. So Sanders and Cassidy, they're kind of working this plan to, have them all testify before the Senate. Here's what ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee said. Ron Wyden, that's his name. He's a Democrat from Oregon. He is already sharpening his knives here. His mouth is foaming and his, face is turning purple as he's writing this, right? Here's what he says. After the mass firings and resignations of respected senior scientists and public servants at the CDC over the last 24 hours, it is imperative that Kennedy answer to the public and the representatives and their representatives about the chaos, confusion, and harm his actions are inflicting on American families. Contrary to his promises of radical transparency, federal agencies have been shrouded in secrecy and misinformation with no accountability. I don't know about you, but firing somebody is like quite literally the definition of accountability, but whatever. Shrouded in secrecy and misinformation with no accountability to the public or Congress. Amid the largest cuts to American healthcare in history, Kennedy's radical secrecy is setting the stage for a health calamity. Get the hell out of here, guy. Okay. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. The CDC is a death call. Do you think that the CDC is a death call? I think it is. Newsflash, Senator. Okay. We're already in a health calamity. Okay. There are more children who are sicker than ever. The chronic health, or chronic disease epidemic is rampant. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. The nation is headed for a health calamity. We are one of the most unhealthy nations in the world. Okay, so we are already there. There is already a health epidemic. Okay, Kennedy is trying to fix this. Okay, so the only calamity you're actually worried about, and you didn't mention, it's not a health calamity. Okay, this is a calamity for those who have a political agenda. That is who you're worried about. That is the calamity that you're actually freaked out about. And Kennedy, what he's doing, he's standing firm in his decisions of firing this woman, the CDC director, former CDC director. He's standing firm in those decisions. And really what he's doing is he's doing an actual investigation. He wants to, eliminate the COVID mRNA vaccine from the childhood vaccine schedule off of science. And he's not, putting up window dressing for political purposes or adhering band-aids on chronic wounds. He's actually trying to address the root causes of this health calamity that we are currently in as a nation. So I want to share this clip. This is RFK Jr. And I'm really worried about the Republicans, because the Republicans seem to be siding with Bernie Sanders. And what kind of Republican is that, really, truly? You're going to side with Bernie Sanders? Take a listen to this. Here we go.
I certainly consider mass shootings a health crisis, and we are doing, for the first time, real studies to find out what the etiology of that is. And we're looking for the first time at psychiatric drugs. These kind of mass shooting, people have had guns in this country forever. When I was a kid, we had shooting clubs at our school. Kids, my classmates, other people would bring a .22 rifle with their guns to school and park it in the parking lot. Nobody was shooting. So there's never been a time in America, in the history of humanity, and people walked into a crowd, into a church or a movie theater or a school or a crowd of strangers and just started randomly shooting. It's happening in our country. It's not happening around the world. And there are many other countries that have comparable levels of guns that we have in this country. We had comparable levels in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and people weren't doing that. Something changed, and it dramatically changed human behavior. And one of the culprits we need to examine is whether the fact that we are the most over-medicated nation in the world, and that a lot of those are psychiatric drugs that have black box warnings on them that warn of suicidal and homicidal ideation. So we are doing those studies right now for the first time, and we will have an answer.
So, like I said, he's addressing the root causes, which nobody has ever had the cojones to do before now. So, RFK Jr., his firing of Susan Monarez has exposed what has been hiding in plain sight for hundreds of years now at this point. There's a much darker agenda of eugenics, sterilization, and depopulation. That is where I'm at with this. I think the CDC is a death cult. The mask is finally down. This war, it's a spiritual war. And I want to play one more clip, and then I'm going to wrap up today's show. But I want to share this with you. He's talking about really how, the CDC seems to want more to do with death than life at this point. So let's take a listen. Hold on, let me pull this up. Here we go.
Today on CDC's website right now, they list the 10 top advances, the 10 greatest advances in medical science, and one of them is abortion. Another is fluoridation, another is vaccines. So we need to look at the priorities of the agency. If there's really a deeply, deeply embedded, I would say, malaise at the agency. And we need strong leadership that will go in there and that will be able to execute on President Trump's broad ambitions. Yeah. Today on CDC's website right now, they list the 10.
Okay. So that was RFK Jr. really confirming what I think is going on, is that the CDC is more for death than life. Okay. You've got it's all about abortions, mass poison, federal mandates. Those are the top priorities at the CDC currently. And when you start pulling at this thread, you start to see the horrifying, unbelievable story unravel. And I think that the people want to see change. The people want to see more life than death. But the people in charge right now seem to want death, not life. So what the heck is going on at the CDC? I think that it's been a death cult, and what RFK Jr. is doing is pretty much essentially cleaning house, and good for him. Shame on the Republicans who, are playing into the Bernie Sanders hands. I mean, really what's going on is Bernie Sanders and Republicans alike. They don't want to lose those dollars funneled into their campaign coffers from Big Pharma. The people who stand to benefit from the CDC pushing and pushing their medications. I mean, we are way over have way too much psychiatric drugs out there. And like RFK Jr. was saying, these drugs have black box warnings on them that there's suicide, like the risk of suicide, like the thoughts of suicide. So the very drug that's supposed to prevent that kind of thing, the psychiatric drug, is actually causing those things via the side effects. And he says, we're going to study these things because we're way over medicated as a country, and we're the most medicated country in the nation, or in the world. And he's taking a look at the root causes here, and they don't like that because that really upends Big Pharma and their money and the money that they're making, and therefore by proxy really what the politicians are making via their campaign coffers from these Big Pharma companies. And the Republicans and the Democrats are both going after, in the Senate, RFK Jr. And that's terrifying. All right. You guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Good morning, CC. Appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you being here. The World Economic Forum, the CDC are a global threat. Yes, at this point, you might as well just take down the CDC. So they were definitely not useful during the pandemic. I appreciate you guys being here. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's Central Time, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central Time. Bye. Love you so much. Talk to you again soon.